Welcome, let's get started since we know it's a busy day and we assume based on the slide above us on the room that everyone's in the right place. Hacking new tech for students' engagement.
We were just talking up here that because we do a lot with technology in and out of the classroom, I don't even think about other uses for the word hacking. So if you're here for hacking new tech for student engagement, we just mean it in a way where it's like, oh, we're taking this tool and we're going to use it in a different way for our own purposes. So if we just want to look at what you're going to get out of this session, we want to manage some expectations. We're not going to actually show you how to step-by-step use any of these tools. That could be another workshop. Happy to work with you outside of this session. So we're just going to take a broad look at 10 tools, actually, or pieces of technology that you could use in the classroom in various ways. But we do have resources collected for you so that you can go back and then explore on your own as far as using these tools with a step-by-step guide. Some tools we've used successfully, other tools we're still experimenting with. I'm going to talk to you about a couple tools that I haven't used in the classroom yet. I've used them in my own personal life outside the class, but I'll tell you how I plan to use them, and maybe we can brainstorm some of that together. So what's in it for you? Hopefully to learn some new tech, some new tools. We'd love for you to ask questions and connect with one another, and I'll get to that in a second. We're going to have some shared notes. We'll have a bunch of resources for you. And more than anything, we want you to come at this with the question prompt of how might we fill in the blank. So how might we use Snapchat in the classroom? And that how might we question we're going to get into when I start talking about design thinking and using that approach in the classroom as well. So the connect with one another part, what I'd like to do just at the start here is take 2 minutes. Think about a tool or a piece of technology that you either use in the classroom already or would like to use. And then what I'd like you to do is just turn to the neighbor next to you, introduce yourself, get to know one another, and talk real briefly about that, and then we'll reconnect as a group.
Or if you haven't used anything and you're not even sure where to start, then share that with your neighbor. Okay, let's get back to the larger group, but hopefully you either know the person next to you or you can, Larry, let's get back to, you're done, your session is done, wonderful emails, and you're going down to get more bagels and Danish. The beauty is you can all make connections with each other if you don't know them already and exchange info and continue the conversation at lunch or after.
That's right. So maybe we could give 2 or 3 people just quickly share what they talked about or shout out a couple of tools or pieces of technology. Yeah.
Okay, well, first off, we bent the rules. We had a 4-people discussion here.
Totally
but what we came out with is that instead of asking students to write reports on the readings that they're doing, set up a discussion group and grade it so they have to participate, in which they give their observations and comments and respond to one another, and then grade them on the quality of the conversation they have about the reading.
Absolutely, and we're going to talk about a couple of different platforms that you can use for that exact purpose. 1 or 2 more. Anyone else? Yeah, in the back.
Talking with Sherry about introducing or utilizing Twitter as a way to extend the conversation after the classroom, and how we're talking about how students obviously have an opinion to everything. And so it was a way if they weren't able to address a certain topic during the class, that it could continue after in an organized way, and how it just blossomed, right? I mean, it just captured and continued. That was one thing we heard in the video today, was continue to engage students beyond the walls.
Exactly. Yep, that's wonderful. One more in the back here.
So we're all students, actually MFA students, and we spoke on how we basically like the Twitter, how we would like to be more engaged with like Snapchat within the classroom. Like if we have discussions and we have to go out to different locations, that our professors could actually we could actually verify where we are with the filters and everything, and we can do in-person, on-the-spot improv interviews and things of that sort within the class.
Yeah, Snapchat is really great for giving that sort of a mini field trip experience or behind the scenes look at something, taking someone to a place where you are, where they are not. I'll talk more about that. So what I'd like to do is actually get a couple of people. I noticed there's a few laptops out. Could I get a couple of volunteers to take some collective shared notes for us? At this bit.ly link, which is just a shorthand URL to a Google Doc, We have an open Google Doc where everyone can contribute notes, other resources, if you have any thoughts or comments, or if you have tools that you want other people to know about or want to put your contact information in there. This bit.ly link, which is just bit.ly/hacknotes, will take you to this Google Doc, and I see one person is in there already, where we can start adding some shared notes. So if a couple of you wouldn't mind doing that throughout the session, I think the rest of us would find that pretty helpful once we leave here. Okay, so once again, to get there, it's bit.ly/hacknotes. And I'll have all these links for you at the end as well.
To introduce myself for those who don't know me, I'm Stef Woods. I'm here because of a tweet. So I'm a WCL law grad. I was practicing in immigration legal services. I had taken time off to finish another grad degree in international affairs. At that time, I started a blog about my then DC's Carrie Bradshaw-esque dating experience. It got very big very quickly. This was a decade ago. So I was writing a blog that averaged about 30,000 page views a month. And I had gotten into sexual health education at that time. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So then I incorporated my experiences during treatment, chemo, surgeries, and being a 30-something with breast cancer, and being a 30-something cisgender female bald, and socializing. And with that, I had a large AU student following. They brought me here on campus for the Social Media Club's first Social Learning Summit to talk about where do you draw your line on social media? How much should students share? And I think because I was so open online, they assumed I would have the same approach to advocate for them to do the same. And I didn't. I showed up with charts and to say, your brand now is as a student, but your brand right after that is to try to get a job. And with that, you need to be really cognizant of how you present yourself. And also cognizant to say, if one of you all is supposed to be at another meeting that's not Ann Farron, then the neighbor shouldn't be checking you in to say, talking about, hacking for better student engagement with Stefano Costanzi when you might need to be elsewhere. Thank you for letting me use you as an example. So I left campus and I missed academia. It had been, 1 year that I hadn't been in academia. And I sent out a tweet to say, being at AU has me wanting to teach a class on sexuality and social media. And my Twitter stream was flooded with positive responses. One AU student talked to her program director, Katarina Bester, who should be here today. And within a month, I was on board as an adjunct. 3 years later, I was a term faculty member. And with that journey, I've also been involved with the Committee for Information Services. Stefano and I are co-chairs of that, the FAC Senate Committee. And I've won some awards for tech and innovation, but I think what's more important to me is being a mentor outside of the classroom. And yes, we'll talk about Twitter for extending conversations and using Twitter in different ways, but so many times I'm checking my Twitter account and I'm following students, they're following me, and I see someone say, I can't handle this personal statement, I can't look at it again. I'm so done with grad school applications. So I sent a tweet and I said, if you need another set of eyes, send it my way. Or sometimes someone just needs a boost to say how am I gonna get through this? And be like, yep, I'm on the same side with how much we have to grade at the end of the semester. Guess what? We're gonna get through it. Like 1 foot in front of the other. Or, someone's page I'm gonna pull up is a huge Bills fan. Yep, I was hoping Buffalo would go further in the playoffs than they did too. So it could be anything from the big picture to the small, but I think it's allowed me to stay in touch with a lot of students, both current and past. And I also appreciate there are some of you who might only use Blackboard right now. And that might be all you're comfortable with. So we hope you leave with maybe an idea to use one other thing. Or there's talk of Blackboard has a new program coming out called Ultra, which will be like trying to mirror Facebook a bit more and make discussions a bit easier. So maybe Blackboard will become more useful, but recognizing that a big part of social media outside of education technology is how our students, in my mind, can learn digital skills that will get them jobs. And it's worked really well for our students. learning not all of these tools, but maybe one of them in a new way. So thanks for being here.
And hi, I'm Jeremiah Patterson. I teach digital and multimedia journalism over at SOC. I'm here because I love thinking about technology and innovation, how we can fold that into the classroom, and how to give specifically our students in SOC the digital tools they need to really succeed in this ever-evolving landscape. I came to AU after a job at the Online News Association, where we positioned ourselves at the intersection of journalism and technology. I primarily love thinking about user experience design, and in the classroom, what that means is my users are students, and so I really try to design my classroom for the best student experience. I joke often in my classrooms that I hate lecturing, they hate listening to me lecture. I'd rather be doing something. Okay, so that's really what I try to do in my classrooms. And so here's a roadmap for what we'd like to walk you through. These are the 10 tools that we arbitrarily selected as things to talk to you about. And as a disclaimer to this, these are all of our solutions because personally, I despise Blackboard. I hate using Blackboard, and I hope there's no representative of Blackboard or anyone connected to the university's decision to use Blackboard, right? Okay.
They
Good.
need to hear that.
Well, I don't use it for my.
Blackboard's on the board, trustee.
Yeah,
He
he's
used
the
to be.
founder, he was an AU student.
Yes.
Used to be.
Yeah, oh, that's
No longer.
So these are my solutions to get around some of the, and I'm exaggerating a little bit just to make a point, but these are some of my solutions to get around some of the challenges that I find with Blackboard and other problems in the classroom as well. So this is what we're going to walk you through. With each one, again, we're not going to tell you exactly how to use it. We're going to tell you what the tool is, what the tool does, and then some possible uses for your classroom. And then later on with the resources, we point you in some directions where you could possibly implement it along the way. Okay?
I love Twitter. How many people in the room are on Twitter? That's a large number to think, I've done similar panels at Anferid and the numbers continue to increase. I think there was thought that Twitter might be on its way out, but lately it has not been, given the finances, if anyone here is into the economics behind it. Possible uses, what I started using it at is there's a Twitter chat is a moderated Twitter forum. So if you're participating on Twitter, and you have a hashtag for your class. So, say, hashtag AU Lit class or AU Lit chat, looking at Kelly and thinking that we already know there's going to be inclement weather delays given how much we've had before the semester's even started. And you might say one class we can miss, but at a certain point, you're going to get too far behind. So then I move things to a Twitter chat. And what I do with that is I make sure everyone knows the hashtag. I send instructions, and I'm happy to email anyone what I do. But I let them know the questions in advance, so they have time to think about how can I respond to those questions within the character limit. They can also then engage with each other. And in lieu of an in-person class, we have an hour Twitter chat. With that said, there are certain classes I teach in the sexual health realm. There's certain activism classes I teach on immigration. I wouldn't do an immigration class on Twitter, but I would do a class on, say, hashtag activism. Do those hashtags really help? Do they make a difference? Do they incite change? And that's been a good conversation. Or certain more esoteric theory readings. With that, though, these are public, so it also gets students thinking about how they're presenting themselves online. How can we have intellectual debates online? And yes, there's a lot that might not be so intellectual online, but for our students and our purposes as teachers, we're trying to narrow their focus and steer them in that direction. But there's been really positive hours. What I love is every time I do a Twitter chat online, I get my followers who can see all of my tweets, then responding and participating in the chat also. So then people are making connections with professionals in the field. I think a great question that I've asked in these chats was, how should we handle social media accounts? Should they be private or public? You always get people from the professional world weighing in on how students should present themselves. for personal branding and for interviewing. I require for several classes I teach when there's a digital component. It's digital health, it's sexuality and social media, it's activism and social media. I ask them to follow 50 individuals, nonprofits, agencies, corporations in the field that they're interested in. So within activism, it could be very broad. We could have very different interests in an activist world, but you'd be following 50 people you'd be interested in, as would you. And so that way, when they go to Twitter, it's curated content for them that they'd like to follow, and hopefully connections that they then can use. That's led to students getting offers to guest blog for different websites. That's led to internships. And in the best case scenario from my perspective, but probably the worst from AU revenue, is someone actually got a job. It started as a guest post. They saw her tweeting about her work, and then it went to an internship, then it went to a paid job, then she didn't return to AU because she's now an editor for a Korean news agency. It's a way to share work. For some of my classes, I assign on projects. We'll talk about that. It's a way for students to figure out their brand, and am I able to click through? Will this show up if I click? To turn and say, Amelia, it's a public account, and she's a public health student. She's saying, passionate about science and helping others, dream is to become a PA, a physician's assistant. And she's still authentic. She's a Bills fan. That's okay. We're all human. We don't just have academic interests. But she's putting out content in a professional, but blending the personal way. And it will help because people are Googling our students. They're trying to figure out what they're interested in. And she's putting forth something that will then help her where she wants to go. And for my class, then she also would be putting her projects online. So I think it's been used in a lot of different ways. I think you also see where students form connections with each other who didn't know each other before using these tools. I also recommend that they follow everyone in the class. So that's adding another level of engagement to kind of address, there's ways we can continue this discussion. Likewise, if someone has any internet safety concerns, I put that in my syllabus and I suggest that they talk to me at the beginning of each class. I don't require that someone uses their full name, AU identifiers, or a photo, but if there were true internet safety concerns, then they likely should not have a presence online, and we would talk through that or work with someone here at another department within AU. So for blogging, there's a lot of different ways that it can be used. You can have through CTRL, David Rose works a lot with what's called open educational resources. How many in the room are familiar with what that is? So open educational resources, or OERs, would be if you're trying to find online tools to replace textbooks. For instance, I assigned for my class on American Dreams, Ragged Dick and Great Gatsby. Yes, some students would prefer to have the hard copy, but in an effort to save textbook costs and be more environmentally friendly, there are some, not all links, where it's actually free for students to access an entire PDF, depending on copyright. So you can work with David Rose at CTRL to guide you towards using more open educational resources, the idea that they're out there. And sometimes there's a full chemistry textbook, there's a full econ textbook, there are entire textbooks online, and you might just be using portions of them, but it has accounted for literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in textbooks saved. And it was estimated that 65% of students don't buy at least one required textbook for a class. What does that do for their learning experience? What does that do for their grade? What does that do for class discussion? Pressbooks is the next level, where you'd set up a class blog, but you literally have all of your resources linked. So students could just go on and say this date, and they click, and then it would go towards that resource. I did teach writing for COM back in my adjunct days for SOC. We had a class blog where, everyone had the same, it was the class password, class username, and throughout the semester, everyone would go on and contribute one post. And then that could also be a method for for then discussion to ensue after that post if you're trying to find a way to bring discussion online. It can be password protected, so it's just for the class also. What I do for my 300 level classes is I have them roll out an online research paper. So in lieu of a traditional research paper that I would grade, I have them posted on a blog, whether it's WordPress or Medium. Now, my blog was on WordPress. I've never written a post on Medium, but I know how to grade it. I know how to read it if they send me the link. So these are tools that you might not actually use or know well, but if they can send you a link and it works, and you can see their work and provide feedback, it serves the purpose. So for the sake of time, I'll just click the bottom. It's still public. Sarah graduated in 2014, I believe, is applying now for different MPH and MPP programs, wrote, and is still, this blog, several years later, is part of their personal statement. This blog is still listed on their resume, and it's showing that we understand how to use digital tools, but we also are writing things sourced and cited correctly, well edited, well thought out. And I think it provides a nice compliment knowing how many employers and some grad programs are asking for writing samples. Yes, we can give you our traditional writing sample in paper form or email you a PDF, but we're also giving you a link to show that not only do we understand how to write well and research well and our critical thinking is there, but we're also able to post it in a way that translates digitally. So I think it's helped people get jobs, and it's helped people, serve as a nice complement to their writing samples. And how many of us text? I think this will be everyone's hands in the air. My second semester teaching here, it was a 300 level class, and I assigned a lot of dense journal articles in the field of sexual health. And I started to realize the students loved those online resources. They didn't quite love reading much of the longer journal articles. So I instituted text message pop quizzes at the beginning of each class. And they'll come in, they'll sit down. I'll go from the opener slide, much like, Jeremiah's opening slide. Second slide will be, text me your answer to X. What I noticed is reading increased. What I noticed is taking notes about the articles increased. What I noticed was discussion increased. And it could be done. I've done it for, Great Gatsby. I've done it for Ragged Dick. I've done it for research studies. I don't go too in the weeds. I'm not saying, tell me about the third graph on page, 70 of this health study. But I found it was a really easy way in lieu of a pop quiz that wasn't environmentally friendly. And it didn't take as long. And I don't grade them as we go. I grade them when I'm submitting feedback to their next graded assignment, which usually is, one around midterms, one close to finals, and then one at finals. So then I literally just review to say, did they touch on the high points? And they lose some points if they don't get the correct answer, but I'll give partial credit if, they clearly read some of the article, but they didn't get where I was going. And it could also be depending on how much time, if it's a block class, like that you want to know if someone agrees or disagrees with the article, or one point they agree or disagree with and why. And then that also can turn to really nice small group discussions later because they've already thought about their answer. So text messaging has been a really nice way to kind of checklist there's certain benchmarks.
I hate to sound really old-fashioned. I know I will. I apologize.
Nope.
Is it appropriate to us to have the cell phone numbers of our students?
That's your decision to make. It's an individual choice, definitely.
I want to make a comment exactly along the same lines. I've used Twitter as well several times in my classes. Right now, currently, I'm just using Twitter for them to do research, not to post. I had a pretty substantial pushback from students, concerns about privacy mostly, and concerns about the fact that pretty much the same things could be achieved more privately using Blackboard. So I was wondering how you overcame these problems, if you encountered them, first of all, and how you overcame it if you did. I did encounter them, and my solution was to abandon any requirement to post on Twitter or to even be present on Twitter, but just use it again as a tool for research. That, for example, to analyze the social media discourse on a given topic or things along those lines, but not to be active, because again, at least in the case of my students, they did not like that, and especially say, why don't you use Blackboard rather than Twitter? So
I think I've had that 3 times out of 690 students. Of course, one of the 3 goes, I'm my professor, but it's Blackboard, and I'm fine. But with that, I think it depends on your class. It depends on your interactions with your students, and it's not a positive or negative. It's just I know I'm going to be writing. I literally have 6 letters of recommendation to get out for 6 different students by February 1. I want to be as accessible as I can be, and that's worked for my class, and it's worked. If someone said they had privacy concerns, I would dig deeper as to what those concerns are. I would also let them know that there's lifelines here at AU. There's resources if they don't feel comfortable talking to me about those concerns. But I think to say that not having an online presence, especially for younger generations, is a choice in 2018. So if they're deciding that is the choice that they're making for them, then I'd like to know why, because they're going to be asked that in interviews. If, as a professor, it's not something you feel comfortable with, then that's not a choice you need to make. I'm hoping people leave with one tool or one approach that they think of that's different. I haven't had, with respect to the phone, I've never had an issue with someone taking advantage of that, and I found it's an easier way of communication. But that's my preference, and that's also worked for my students. But I let them know that in advance, so someone could play or pass. But likewise, if it's not something you're comfortable with, then you shouldn't use it. So to say, if it's a work-related matter, or then they have my number down the road for recommendations, or I would much rather 5 emails that 5 text messages that students are running late than 5 emails that students are running late or have a health issue. If you prefer email, whatever it is, let them know your preferred mode of communication, whether it's Blackboard, whether it's your AU email account, whether it's text messaging. But it's been effective for my purposes in class, so it's an idea.
Just to build on this real quick too, because there was a question about should we have the students' numbers. I asked, should the students have my number? A quick solution for that is that Google Voice will allow you to create a local number for free and have it forward to your phone. So that's what I do. I give out my Google Voice number and forwards to my phone. I use it the same way, and that's an easy solution. And I guess if a student were really concerned but wanted to be able to text you, and that could be a solution for them too. They can get Google Voice just as easily. It's free. I'm all about free tools.
So I'm pro technology. Small disclaimer, but you may remember like a couple months ago there was an article in the New York Times which was talking about the use of technology in classroom and deep concern about sorry.
It's in action.
New York Times, sorry. The main point was tools, technology tools, critical thinking, deep learning. How do we strike the right balance between, all of those things?
This is one question to make sure someone's done a reading in addition to whatever their class participation is. If it's my goal with a text question is spending no more than 5 minutes, and some of them I call lightning rounds. And it's a 1-word, 1-sentence answer for my, a 200 level class. I need them to know what is semiotics. Text me the answer to that question. And then we're going into a 70-minute lecture of what semiotics is with examples on the board. Then they're writing a paper or a final that's related to that. So my goal with text messaging isn't deep learning. My goal with text messaging is I found it was a way that increased student reading, which led to better discussion. That was my personal experience. So it's one suggestion. And for sake of time,
I was going to say, if it's okay, I'm going to put a pause on Is it directly related?
Well, yeah, it is about, I think, how do you know the students are texting each other the answer to texting?
Because of the time.
Of the time frame.
Yeah, it's not a lingered situation.
Okay.
It's between 2 minutes and 5 minutes.
They don't have time to text each other the answer.
No, plus I'm seeing their notes
Oh,
out.
okay.
I'm seeing, the computers are open if they're doing green notes, or I'm seeing, and you can tell from discussion. At the, after a couple classes, we know who's done, who participates and who doesn't, who's done the reading and who doesn't.
I'm just curious about redundancy and, for the sake of simplicity, using as few. If Blackboard Learn, if you can make it happen with that, why would you, necessarily want to stretch out to use 8 different other types of?
I don't think either of us use 8 in any one class.
I might use 8 across classes, but it really depends so take a step back, and again, I'm all about user experience design. So what is the experience you're trying to design in your classroom? What is a challenge you're facing, and could any one of these help you meet that challenge? That's all. I don't use all of these in class except for when I'm teaching them to journal. That's a different story. Sure. But for a classroom purpose, I might use like 1 or 2 of these at any given time.
And they're not putting Blackboard on their resume. Leveraging Twitter, writing an online project, accessing Facebook Live in the way, the MFA students were inquiring about. Former students then went to the Smithsonian, and suddenly Smithsonian was using Snapchat. And it all came from a student intern who had the idea to say, let's do geofilters. And so the idea to say, like, I'm trying to equip students with not just knowing digital skills, but then how to use them and how they can be adapted. I've had students then ask me for my template for Twitter chats, and then they're doing it from the nonprofit world, or they're doing it from a health agency. But again, we're not using all 10. It's can something bolster what you're doing?
So on that note, we've got 7 more tools to get through in like 2 minutes. So I'm gonna just kind of briefly run through these, and it sounds like we really want to get to Q&A. So let's just put a pause on questions for right now. Okay, so Facebook Live, has anyone used Facebook? Has anyone watched a Facebook Live? Great. Has anyone broadcast with a Facebook Live? Ooh, like 40. Has anyone used it for class? Yeah, sure. Jill. Okay, great. So Facebook Live allows you, assuming you have a Facebook account, to very easily broadcast a live video stream from this device, which is remarkable because that literally did not exist more than a year and a half ago. Okay, I used to do live streaming, and even 5 years ago, it required like a separate camera connected to the computer, connected to the internet, blah, blah, blah. Now you click one button and it says live, go, you're done. I think, has anyone watched this video from BuzzFeed, the exploding watermelon? I was going to show it, but watch it on your own time. When Facebook Live first came out, nobody knew what to do with it. Everyone was like, what should we do with Facebook Live? Like, this is great, I can live broadcast, but how is this going to bring value to the world? BuzzFeed said, okay, we don't know, but let's try something. How about we take a rubber band and put it around a watermelon? And how many rubber bands do we have to put before it explodes?
Just get to the best part.
11 million people decided this was interesting. Okay, and this gets into engagement. This is where I'm teaching Facebook Live and journalism classes about, what you need to be doing for broadcast and engagement, etc. Okay, we'll just watch the end real quick. You already know what's going to happen, but it's still kind of exciting.
Hi, I'm Chelsea.
And I'm James. So one rubber band at a time, they do this.
What is it?
And what you'll notice is the BuzzFeed staff starts gathering around them more and more as they get closer.
3, 4, and 5 minute drive.
Right.
624. Sorry, I was 674. 675.
Oh, geez. Oh.
What's that? 676. 679.
My dear birthday.
It's very exciting. Okay. So nobody really knew what to do with Facebook Live, and broadcasters are still figuring that out. I've used it in the classroom, especially when I've had students, for example, in a Saturday class I teach, it's 8 hours, and not always can a student be there. It's for mid-career professionals, and sometimes they might have their own wedding to go to, or can't make it down from New York to attend class, or whatever. So I use Facebook Live to stream lectures so that they can tune in remotely, and then also it automatically records and posts back to the page so they can watch it later. In this one, I was introducing a class assignment, and it's further down in the chat here, but one of my students who was watching it ended up chatting with me her questions, so I could answer them live back to her. So I think that's a practical usage right from the get-go. Streaming a lecture or streaming an activity you're doing in class, something where you're trying to allow someone to tune in remotely. Or if you're the one who's remote that day, if you can't, for some reason this is class that you have to miss, you could have other people tune into you while you sort of stream from wherever you are giving a lecture or what have you. And again, it automatically records, so it makes it easy to post those later on. Quick question? Yeah.
Comment about accessibility of Facebook Live. They haven't quite figured out captioning of live video yet, so I just want to put that out there. If you have students in your class who have needs around accommodation, just remember that might not be the right tool for that particular class.
Wonderful point. Thank you for bringing that up.
We're trying to figure that out campus-wide with kind of how students are using it and how we're using it to engage with students that work with campus sites. But we want to be really mindful of that. Often we'll kind of do the video and then repost really quickly with the captions added.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And in fact, I would also, just to expand, it's sort of an industry challenge right now too, is that nobody really knows how to do, well, besides paying like a stenographer or something. No one knows how to do these captions cheaply and effectively. Snapchat is how many people are on Snapchat or have used Snapchat? Okay, how many people have no idea what Snapchat is / don't care? Okay. Snapchat, very quickly, without getting into the details, is a quick platform that allows you to send photos, videos, chats to one another, and they disappear after a predetermined amount of time. And you might ask, well, how is that useful? And nobody knows, but it's popular, right? And but I still think that there's some opportunity here for using it in the classroom or for class projects, or as it was mentioned in the back at the beginning of the session, you might be able to show that you're at a particular place and sort of give a tour of that place. Here are some students from Ithaca College, I believe, giving a Snapchat story from the Republican primary in South Carolina with the 2016 election. They developed a whole story around this. A story on Snapchat is a collection of photos and videos that stream together, one right after the other. Here is and I just grabbed this from the internet, I forget who it is now, but a psychology professor using Snapchat to sort of meet students where they are to quickly explain one of the things they talked about in class and to sort of give a demonstration. So think about this as value plus. So you might have talked about something in class, and then now you can show a real-world example, because maybe you didn't have access to something in class, and then as I'm out and about living my normal life, I can say, oh wait, here's that thing I was talking about in class. Let me just put this on my own story real quick, and as long as you follow me, you can see that, and it helps to make some connections that you might not always get to make in class. Here's a couple of more examples. The nice thing is that you can use this for annotation of sorts. You can draw on the screen, you can add captions, you can add filters. Again, I think this helps bridge a little bit of the gap in terms of meeting students where they are, but helping to augment traditional classroom learning. It's not for everyone. I'll also admit, even though I am a millennial, that like Snapchat, that doesn't come with user instructions, and they change it all the time. And there's all sorts of ways that you swipe and touch the screen that have different purposes. I constantly find myself Googling, like, how do you do this on Snapchat? So I don't have all the answers. Here's a quick example from a journalism professor at what school. He is using Snapchat to quickly troubleshoot with students. They might be editing a video and they're saying, hey, I'm having a hard time with A or B. And he's saying, okay, are you using a Mac or PC? Go back in, check this code. I guess they were doing some HTML. And going back and forth that way. It's a quick tool to do that. Possible uses. I mentioned quick disappearing chats with students. Sometimes I have found, because we do a lot of group projects in my classes, students need a way to communicate with me, to talk about each other a little bit, and then sometimes they feel uncomfortable with there being like a digital archive of that. Snapchat is great because like the messages do disappear, so they're able to sort of come talk to me digitally without feeling like there's a recording of it, and allows them to be a little more open about that. I'm still exploring about as far as how to implement this more into my classroom. But again, sharing real world examples, annotating images, which can be useful, and starting some discussions. Okay, chatbots is something that I'm really excited about. Chatbots are artificial intelligence, and you interact with them just like you would via text or like a Facebook Messenger bot. And it's a way to think of it as your own like virtual help assistant as a professor, for example. Let's say that you get the same 50 questions all the time about a particular project, right? And it's very annoying answering those questions, even though it's either in the syllabus or on the spreadsheet, right? Like it's in the syllabus, I love saying that. So with the tool chatbot, you can have a piece of AI technology that answers those questions automatically for you. They're actually pretty easy to build because there are tools that allow you to build them without having to know how to code. I built one for this session last night in about 25 minutes. It's very basic. I just wanted to demo it for you here. So if I view this on Messenger, we should be able to chat with it. And this would assume that you came to the Facebook page and hey Jeremiah, thanks for joining our session today. It's typing. How's the session going so far? Oh, I'm not sure why it's repeating. We'll say it's going okay. It's going okay. Should ask, and how are the presenters so far? Do you like them? It's now double typing because I put okay twice. We'll say, yeah, they're pretty good. Okay, cool. And then it should come back and maybe it's just delayed. It should give me the resources to the session then. A little bit buggy. Again, I only built it in about 30 minutes. But what I actually do plan to do, here it comes, is to use this to group all of my resources together and to get some FAQs into a system to use for one of my new classes this spring, and to experiment with the technology that way. So it gives me some links, and then it's going to say goodbye with a little gift.
And there was a lunchtime panel at Ann Fair a few years ago where someone from Harvard came down and gave us like the pointers that you could, the pollsters. This is a far more economical way, since not all of us can be in class with that equipment. And if you're interested, remember, we're here as resources. CTRL is always there as a resource. If there's one thing that can augment your teaching experience and their learning experience.
I see possible uses for this in the classroom, again, as a FAQ, if you have a lot of the same questions over and over again. I could also see it similar to how Stef is using text messaging for a quiz. I could see a quiz that you draft up on here, the answers are recorded, they select one of multiple choice or what have you. And I also see this as an opportunity to troubleshoot. If you're having students go through a step-by-step guide and you don't want to field all those questions about like, is your device powered on? Is it plugged into the wall? That's sort of like IT troubleshooting, but you can apply that to different fields as well. Okay, Trello is a project management tool. Has anyone used Trello before? Love Trello, big Trello guy here. It's a great digital way to bring people together for collaboration. This is a screenshot of what a Trello board looks like. They're called boards when you have, think of it as like a giant digital whiteboard, and then these columns are called lists, and think of each card in that column as a sticky note. It's almost as if you had a bunch of sticky notes and you put them together in an organized way onto a whiteboard. This is a digital version of that. But the great thing is you can drag and drop these cards around just like you can take a sticky note off the board and put it on somewhere else. You can tag people to be part of a card. You can add checklists to a particular card, assign deadlines, etc. One of my classes used this in the past to manage the publication of different stories around the 2016 presidential election. So we decided to set up our lists as checkpoints almost. So you have a story, which is a particular card, millennial reaction. And it started off over in doing. So a student was doing that card. They were doing that story. And once it was done and ready for a first edit, the card was dragged to the first edit column, and then we knew the first editor had to go in and look at it. And then so on and so forth. And the card moved along. So at any point, we could get a heads-up display of where every story was in the process. So you can see that you can use this as a project management tool if you have a lot of group projects, or if you want to help students sort of like organize different aspects of their own experience in your class. Here's what I'm working on for the assignments. Or I've seen some Trello boards around like research papers. Here are all my sources, and here's how I sort of plan to block things out, and then you can go in and sort of help them reorganize things. Again, think of it as a digital way to take sticky notes or index cards and rearrange them. Possible uses, digital brainstorming, it's great for that. If you have a group of people and they're not all together, or you want to take it outside of class, you can just keep creating cards, just like you would keep taking sticky notes and putting them up on a list. Project organization, group collaboration. GroupMe, this one is really easy to get through. GroupMe is simply a group messenger app. Has anyone used GroupMe before? Similar to, what's the other one? WhatsApp, thank you. So there are a bunch of different group messaging apps. I found GroupMe really helpful, again, when you're doing group projects or want to have all of your class onto one messaging app together. The nice thing is here, in getting back to the who should have what phone numbers conversation, you don't need a phone number, or you don't need to have each other's phone numbers, you just need a GroupMe account. I've used GroupMe successfully in a couple of different classes where students had to organize themselves and be in charge of a production, whether that's a show or a digital production for journalism. So we have editors each week, and they need to know, okay, who's doing what, how are you doing on things, and they're constantly checking in with each other. And then I can monitor that conversation as well, because I'm in the group and jump in when they have questions. Or sometimes they use it as a way just to communicate with each other. This is our master's students in journalism for this cohort, and they're just sort of talking to each other. Hey, here's the book that we need for spring term. One of our other professors, Terry, he's jumped in there to talk about a couple of other things. So it's really quick group messaging. I use this a lot instead of email. Hey, we're meeting in this classroom today, or like, oh, a guest speaker's coming, make sure you have this and that. And I find it's a lot quicker than sending an email, hoping it gets to students in time and hoping that they check it at the time too. Here's some possible uses for you. Quick announcements, especially. Polls, there's a poll option in GroupMe too. It's great for that. You can like create a poll and then it'll solicit responses from people and it'll tally those up for you. Google Docs. Does anybody use Google Docs? Wonderful. Okay, I don't have to like preach to you about the value of Google Docs. Since you know my feelings about Blackboard, I use Google Docs predominantly for all of my coursework. Here's a look at one of my classes. This is a class that meets for 6 weeks. I have a folder for every week in that class. And the students, they already have, the nice thing about Google Docs, students already have Google accounts. By nature of the American University email for students, they already have a Google account, so they don't need anything new to connect with you on Google and to use whatever you have on Google. I find this to be a really great resource, and I think it's a more intuitive way to share things than Blackboard often is. That's usually my biggest struggle with Blackboard, is that it's not great for sharing between, going back and forth. But Google Docs is good for that, and it's frankly a more beautiful setup and a better experience. So here's an example where I have everything broken down into weeks for a particular class. And if you jump into a particular week, you get all the presentations, you get all the resources, it's all organized that way. You can think of it as like a mini website almost. That's just for Google Drive, which is your cloud storage, online storage of things. But you can also use Google Docs, or Drive rather, to collect things from students. So I'm really trying to cut back on email. I don't want you to email me a paper, and I don't want you to turn it in physically, because then it's physical paper, and my students have talked to me about wasting a lot of paper in my classes before. But they can submit something to me in an organized way. I've set up a class before where I've had a folder for every student. It's shared just between me and that student, and then they submit, say, a video file to me. And then I go in and I can look at that video file. Now you might ask, well, how do I know if they actually met the deadline or not? every time you upload something to Google Docs, there's a record of when it was uploaded or when it was changed. So even if you submit a paper to me, I can tell when you submitted that paper and whether it got edited after the fact, etc. So it meets some of those challenges.
And from an academic integrity perspective, what I like if a paper is submitted via Google Docs is you can see you click and you can see version history or editing history. So that was actually a way where I realized, you know, several freshmen in one class were going to their family for more than heavy edits. But that, you know, that could be let's have discussion as to what's original work and what's inappropriate collaboration. And I think it's also a good way where if you want to be cognizant, wow, I'm tasking them with writing and then putting it away and then editing, proofreading, coming back to it again, you can see that in the version history. So you could see how many days or hours someone spent on an assignment. And I'm not saying that that will impact their grade. It depends on the final product, but I think it can also help you guide them to be better writers and better researchers when you can see version history.
And if anybody, just as one quick addition to Google Docs, if anyone co-teaches a class, I found that Google Spreadsheets is really great because both instructors or multiple instructors can be in the same spreadsheet together, adding grades or being able to track students in a little bit more efficient way than Blackboard usually allows. Okay, and the last one is not a tool or a piece of technology, but it's sort of a mindset that I just wanted to leave you with. Design thinking. Has anyone used design thinking or played around with design thinking? No one? Oh my God. Oh, a little bit? Okay, this is what I get really excited about. So if you want to like powwow about this after the fact, like let me know. So design thinking is a human-centered approach to solve big problems. So wherever you go in the world, we have challenges, right? And we have to find a way to solve them. And design thinking or human-centered design is a way to empathize with people as humans and the way that they have to encounter a particular challenge or problem and then solve it using a design thinking approach. So, you know, you hate when like the trash bag of a trash can always like falls down inside because you put something heavy in. Here somebody hacked that process or implemented some human-centered design to solve that, right? And it's really cheap, really easy. Here's one where the handle apparently is something you should not be touching, so do not turn the handle. Do not turn the handle. And then someone left a sticky note. So I should turn the handle? Here we're doing a quick fix to a problem that humans are encountering. Or how about this one? These drive me nuts all the time. If we didn't have handles on the push side, no one would try to pull it, right? And then you wouldn't need the signs. So it's about simplifying our world or finding solutions to challenges while thinking about people as humans and the way that they use things. This is a process that you use for human design approaches. You first empathize with people as humans. You try to understand the problem that they are looking to solve. You define what that problem is. Part of that definition is asking a how might we statement. So with the door thing, how might we be able to take off these signs if we change the way that the handles are affixed to the door? In your classroom, it might be, how might I give students more ownership of the way that an assignment is designed? Or how might I use Snapchat to augment discussion outside of the classroom? Start with a how might we statement, focus it, and then you're going to have an ideate session, brainstorm, sticky notes. No idea is a bad one. Everything goes up on the board. Prototype quickly, fail fast, test, move on successfully. Some of the guidelines for design thinking, one conversation at a time. You encourage the wild ideas, defer judgment, no devil's advocates, build on the ideas of others, fail often, succeed sooner. Okay, this mindset in the classroom I have found to be effective for group work. If you do a lot of group work, it's nice to take a step back from that, lead a class through a design thinking exercise, have them solve a problem that doesn't necessarily relate to what you're doing in class, just to get through the process. And then I find that it enables students to think about group work a little bit differently. So it helps to level out some of your students. You've got the go-getters, or you've got the ones who don't like participate as much, or you've got the loud ones, or you've got the quiet ones. when you've got a design thinking approach to problem solving, it helps to level out some of those people or voices, and it helps to bring everyone to the table to do something together. So I just sort of wanted to leave you with that, because as you're also looking at the other 9 tools that we talked about, your statement might be, how might I use Trello to fix problem X that I'm having in class? And we don't mean to offer these 9 tools as your end-all be-all solutions to things. We just want you to think about them and what they can do for you. Okay, so we will leave the last little bit for questions, but before we get there, I also just wanted to tell you that we've compiled resources for you, including the presentation at this bit.ly link, bit.ly/AFC18hack. It is case sensitive, what's after the slash there, so bit.ly/AFC18hack. You can go there and find resources, including the presentation. Question?
Yeah, so I have a question out for you, since you know you don't like Blackboard. I like Blackboard. So
I'm in his camp.
So
sorry, I was like,
if you wanted to go live, or if you wanted to have some type of presentation, you know, these platforms do have censoring, and someone outside from the outside world can come in and get you blocked, or they can get your, you know, CAS taken off. Especially Facebook. Facebook's kind of hardcore. And so what would you use in order to get on there and freely say whatever you want to say?
Sure.
And do whatever you want to do.
So when I use Facebook Live in the classroom, what I have before Facebook Live is a private group for that class. A private Facebook group that is just the members of that class and me in there. And then once it's just us, I would think that the students aren't going to censor me or something. So it should be okay, yeah. So we're kind of leaving out like 16 steps with each of these tools. But that's one thing I would do for Facebook. When it comes to Google Docs and such, that's really easy because you can control sharing. If I put everything in one folder, I can make sure that that one folder is only shared with my students based on their email accounts. And then everything that gets put into that folder or created within that folder is under the same sharing principles.
And I just want to ask you, who do you think has the best live? Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, or what?
Ooh, they are all a little bit different. I think Periscope, it's safe to say, is dead. Facebook Live, I think, is the easiest to use. YouTube Live is launched within the last few months. I haven't used YouTube Live yet. And then Snapchat and Instagram both have a live feature, but it operates a little bit differently. I would use it for smaller snippets, not for like long broadcasts. Is that fair?
And I think it's also recognizing that, you know, certain conversations are better for in class and in a traditional in-person environment, but being cognizant, you know, we also have to be cognizant of our brand the same way. You know, I almost tweeted something about some parking situation at AU, and I was like, nope. And I just put my phone away and said, you know, tell it to the next colleague I see, because that's my job. You know, I'm not going to tweet something and then have it come back. So our students have to realize that also. So there's certain conversations I think are more appropriate to steer online versus others, and to recognize privacy. Again, Jeremiah and I are interested in the digital world, and we're trying to meet our students where they are. But it's not to say that if you've taught with Blackboard and that's worked well for you, that you need to go off of it, but maybe consider if one of the tools we mentioned today would be a nice supplement, knowing how many students are on the tools that, not all of them, but definitely some of them that we've talked about.
Cool. You just mentioned not all of them are in these tools, right? And so how do you convince those who are not already on these tools to go on the tools? For example, if you want to do a live streaming, you can use Blackboard Collaborate, and you know that the students are all there, but maybe not all of them are on Facebook. So what is your strategy to convince them to go on Facebook if you think there are advantages to be on Facebook rather than on Blackboard Collaborate, for example?
Minute per minute, hour per hour, week per week, I guarantee you more students are on Facebook more than Blackboard. And are we banking that you know, I assign stuff to my first class for every class. And Blackboard's the only tool I have for that first class, and then I switch them off after that first class to go away from Blackboard. Guarantee I'm gonna walk in, yep, everyone had the assignment the same way. I sent an announcement, I clicked all the boxes. I bet, what, 30 to 40% won't have read by the first class. Now, I'm not saying that will be every class, and I think, we hope we have a rapport and that students are doing the work they're supposed to. I think they're on at least Facebook far more than they're on Blackboard in a given week. So to say that we're going where they aren't, I think it's, plus it's letting students know expectations in the syllabus. If someone's not comfortable being on social media, then I would say maybe you're not taking a class with digital or online or social media in the title of the class. That's a fair, but I remember I had one student, my second semester say, well, do I really need online tools? I'm going to be a researcher. I was like, let me know how that works in the microfiche, world, because we've all done it, or for, many of us of certain age ranges. So I think it's what you feel comfortable with, but I would believe that they are there.
At the beginning, when we were brainstorming, I was thinking of a tool to replace clickers in class. So, any way that you can assign quizzes that are graded or multiple choice classes to improve the participation. And I know that there are apps for assigning multiple choice question and so on, but I don't see a way. I didn't came out with something that gave me, oh, I can use this or I can do that. Is there anything that, instead of the old clickers, which I still use, that can be more modern?
The chatbots you mentioned is a possibility, right? Oh, like doing like a quick question, like a poll survey.
Oh.
With instant tallies, I think is the.
I see. I think that you could hack a Google form to do that. Also, well, let me. How about, I don't know is the right answer right now, and I will get back to you if you give me your contact information. I'll go home and look at some things for you, because I guarantee there's some.
Google Doc can do it.
Okay. Through Google Forms?
Yeah. Google Forms. And you can have response form, and that response form cannot be shared, for example, for other people.
I guess, yeah, I know there is a survey in Google that you can use, but I was looking at something that was more immediate for the student, that they can use their phone or laptop and answer it on real time.
Yeah, I've used some. Actually, they make like session feedback tools that are like that. That I'm sure you could use in much the same way. The names are escaping me now, but again, I can look some of those up and get back to you. But it definitely exists.
And also, AU subscribes and our office supports it. You can use Quadfix as for multiple choice as well.
What was that name?
It's a online survey platform called Qualtrics. There's no cost involved for the department. We already pay the university-wide license.
Poll everywhere. Yeah, it's a poll everywhere. We can actually
Yes.
run that.
But it's not free.
Up to a certain amount of your classes, like under 50 students, then it can be a good option for you. I also wanted to mention something about some of these apps like GroupMe that you're mentioning. They have push notifications, and that's how people get their information now. So if you're working in an external app as opposed to email, that's a way so it's popping up directly on the student's phone and giving you a push notification. A lot of people get the news that way and other things. So it's just kind of how our students are hoping to engage with us. So that's just a thought. And then for the Trello example and Google Docs, so I know in Outlook, which is new for faculty and staff, that there is Teams, which is it's set up very similar to Trello. I don't know how students go about accessing that, if it's just an AU login so they can see it, or if they would need to get an account set up. But that might be something to look at.
Can they, because they have Google?
They can send it there on different kind of.
But so my understanding is that they can add it because they have the AU username and password, and that's how you would access it. So that just might be a question to ask if that could be something going forward, because there's also OneDrive, which is essentially the Google Drive for Microsoft.
Which can be shared also like Google Drive.
Yeah. So just a couple of things as we're trying to figure out our Outlook world.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions?
So is there a platform to share calendars? I know you have Google and stuff, but nothing that integrates with your outside world calendar, right? So like, for example, yeah, so like.
What's your outside?
Like either through my iPhone or, but yeah, so in my work environment, I'm on Outlook, which integrates with my iPhone, but I can't integrate those.
Oh, I see. See, I'm really bad at it because I don't use my Outlook for me. I just use my Gmail, and so then I do things like.
But I have to for work, so
Right.
I'm an adjunct. So
Right.
I have yet to find something. Everybody's just Google, but Google Calendar.
Then
But
you
I
can't
have
sync
yet,
it with.
right, I have yet to find something. So if I need to schedule one-on-ones and stuff outside of office hours, it's challenging.
Let me again. Let me look some things and let's exchange contact, and then I'll tell you back to you.
Hey, so in Google Docs, I have created folders for my different classes and put materials in. I had used SoundCloud for gathering up audio stories, right? And then putting them on Blackboard so that we could play them in class to critique them. But it's cumbersome. So then I'm kind of thinking, well, maybe I should have them send their SoundCloud to Google Docs. But I guess I have two questions there. One is, in my Google Docs, so I guess conceptually I'm having trouble understanding this, there are things I don't want them to see after I've lectured about it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I want to avoid that. And then there may be materials too that you talked about having individual students with their individual files. There might be something I want to have a student send to me that I don't want to have another student look at.
Correct.
But since the nature of this is collaborative, maybe that's just not something that it can do.
It can.
The student files would just be between you and the student.
Sharing.
Just share.
Well, there's two things, I guess. One is if you have a digital audio class and you want everybody to put stuff in the one file, then that means everybody can get into it, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so that would be a good thing. But if I also have lecture materials I don't want them to see,
correct.
You understand what I mean? I'm just having trouble.
It's just, and Joe, I'm happy to, I can hang out with you and I can walk you through the sharing permissions. But what I usually do with these is I don't want them to see weeks 2 and on until I'm done with week 1. So week 1 I don't share, I share week 1 with them, and then as we go, even though I already have it there, I will share the others with them as we go.
So you're putting a block on, so I guess that's what I just don't know how to
and
do.
then these folders that I have, I create one folder for every student, and it's shared just between that student and myself, so they can submit things to me or drop things into the folder without other students seeing. So it's just a matter of a sharing.
And it's your experience that they like this better than submitting it to Blackboard?
Yes. I don't mean to sound like such a, I feel bad. I haven't really met any students who enjoy Blackboard. Let me put it that way. So, okay, so we're happy to stick around for a little bit. And again, I love helping people with things. So here's our emails, and then also if you just wanted to talk with us, we're up here. Separately, we've also been asked to remind you to fill out the feedback. So the feedback survey is a tiny URL link. So you can go to tinyurl.com/AFC18109. And I believe this is case sensitive as well. So just watch that. Otherwise, have fun with our resources. We hope that you got something out of it, and thanks for coming.
Thank you all.